I mean, if you want to destroy your biggest rival in the tech world, the standard playbook is pretty obvious, right? You build a better piece of hardware.
Right, yeah. You add more screens, more sensors.
Exactly, more features. But right now, Google is trying to win the wearable war by doing literally the exact opposite.
Which is so wild.
It is. They are like stripping features away. They're literally ripping the screen off their newest tracker and selling it for a price so low it almost defies the basic rules of hardware economics.
It's a profound shift, honestly.
Yeah.
And if you look at the mainstream coverage right now, the industry completely misinterprets what Google is actually doing here.
Yeah, and so that's what we're looking at today for our deep dive. We're getting into Google's sudden launch of the $99 screenless Fitbit Air.
Right.
Because if you just glance at the tech blogs, you're seeing all these headlines declaring it, a Whoop killer or a Garmin killer.
Oh, yeah, everywhere.
Like, they're framing this as some bloodthirsty head-to-head spec battle for dominance over your wrist. But we are tossing that narrative entirely. It is just a total misreading of this strategic situation.
Yeah, the whole whoop killer narrative fundamentally misunderstands the business model of, both companies. To get to the truth, we really need to look at the underlying data.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are pulling from a massive stack of sources to uncover the real story for you.
We've got some great stuff to go through.
Yeah, we have authoritative strategic analysis from the 5K runner. We've got really deep, hands-on technical testing from DC Rainmaker and the mainstream consumer perspective from PC Mag.
Right.
And what these sources reveal is that Google isn't actually trying to destroy Whoop or Garmin. The Fitbit Air is this massive ecosystem play designed to lock in their existing users.
And, maybe more importantly, it's a loss leader.
Exactly. This $99 band is a highly efficient vehicle designed to feed vast amounts of your human health data directly into Google's AI models.
Yeah. But to understand why the media got this so wrong, we first have to look at the physical device Google actually built and how it radically alters the pricing expectations for the whole screenless wearable category.
Right. Let's look at the hardware because it is surprisingly simple. DC Rainmaker got hands-on with it and described it perfectly. Imagine you take the existing Fitbit Charge 6, you literally peel the glass screen completely off and just call it the Air.
Just a little pebble, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You're left with this little polycarbonate pod. You pop it into a fabric or silicone band, and, that's it. You get a 7-day battery life, optical heart rate sensors, and a haptic motor for smart wake alarms.
Right. Those monitor your sleep cycles so they vibrate when you're in a light stage of sleep.
Right.
So it tracks your baseline metrics, sleep stages, daily readiness, background atrial fibrillation detection. I mean, it's capable, but the hardware itself isn't revolutionary.
No, not at all.
The disruption here is entirely financial. Google priced the Fitbit Air at $99 outright. But the crucial detail is that there's no mandatory subscription required to use the device.
Which is huge.
Right. You buy it once and you own that baseline experience forever.
Which feels like an earthquake when you look at the rest of the market. PC Mag ran the numbers on the Whoop 5.0, which has basically owned the screenless category for years.
Oh, yeah, totally dominated it.
But you can't even buy a Whoop device outright. You have to purchase a Peak membership, which sits at $239 a year.
Every single year.
Right. So let me ask the obvious question here. If I'm looking at a one-time $99 payment for a Fitbit versus handing Whoop $239 every single year forever,
yeah.
Why isn't Whoop bankrupt by Friday? I mean, on paper, this looks like an automatic death blow, right?
Well, if they were fighting over the exact same consumer, it absolutely would be.
Yeah.
But they aren't.
Okay, right.
That $99 price tag makes it look like this offensive weapon meant to steal Whoop users. But when we dig into the buyer psychology, it becomes clear this is really a defensive retention strategy.
See, I assumed anyone buying a screenless tracker was doing it for the exact same reason. They just want fitness data without distractions.
That's what most people think.
But the 5K runner breaks this down into 3 very distinct buyer paths, and it completely reframes who this device is actually built for.
Yeah, the analysis from the 5K runner is critical here because it highlights the sheer scale of Google's existing footprint. Path 1 represents the largest group by a massive margin.
The legacy band owners.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about tens of millions of people globally who are currently wearing aging Fitbit Inspire, Lux, or older Charge models.
Right. If you look around an office or grocery store, you see these everywhere. People who bought a Fitbit 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And the physical reality of a 4-year-old wearable is rough. The lithium-ion battery has degraded, so it barely holds a charge. The sensors are scratched. The rubber strap is peeling off.
And those millions of people are not reading tech blogs to debate the nuances of Whoop's recovery algorithms versus Garmin's training load focus.
Definitely not.
Right. They just want their step counter and sleep tracker to survive the week.
Yeah.
So when that old Fitbit finally dies, they face a choice. Do they research a totally new brand, learn a new app interface, and abandon, 5 years of historical step and sleep data?
Probably not.
Right. Or did they just spend $99 for the cheapest, most familiar replacement within the ecosystem they already know? The Fitbit Air is designed to be the path of least resistance.
It is a totally frictionless upgrade. You don't lose your data. You don't change your habits. You just pay the $99.
Exactly.
But the 5K runner also outlines Path 2 and Path 3, which introduces a behavior I hadn't even really considered. They call it split shift wearing.
Oh, yeah. It solves a very real ergonomic problem for heavy smartwatch users.
Explain how this works, because the idea of buying a second fitness tracker when you already own a $300 smartwatch sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Well, think about the physical experience of wearing a premium smartwatch like a Fitbit Sense or a Google Pixel Watch.
Okay.
You wear this heavy piece of metal and glass during the day because you need the utility, right? You want text notifications, you want to pay for your coffee with your wrist.
You need the onboard GPS to map your run.
Exactly. But wearing that bulky metal watch to bed is just uncomfortable. It catches on your sheets, it digs into your wrist if you roll over, and practically speaking, you eventually have to take it off to charge the battery anyway.
Right, of course.
So the split shift wearer takes off the heavy Pixel Watch at night, throws it on the charger, and puts on this lightweight, screenless $99 Fitbit Air just to track their sleep.
Wow. But technically speaking, how does the software handle that? If I'm wearing 2 different devices in a 24-hour period, doesn't the app get confused? Like, doesn't it double count my calories or lose my sleep data?
That is where Google's back-end infrastructure really shines. Both devices are linked to the exact same Google Health account.
Okay.
The software is designed to seamlessly stitch those timelines together. It knows when the Pixel Watch comes off and the Air goes on. It creates one continuous stream of data without any manual syncing required from the user at all.
That is fascinating. So when you lay out those 3 massive groups, the legacy upgraders, the split shift Fitbit watch wearers, and the split shift Pixel watch wearers, you realize something crucial.
None of them are leaving other brands.
Right. None of these people are Whoop switchers. None of them are Garmin defectors. They are all people who are already standing safely inside Google's walled garden.
Precisely. Google is just boarding up the exits. They are providing an incredibly cheap, really attractive reason to just stay in the ecosystem.
But surely there is some friction, right? I mean, the tech media isn't inventing this rivalry completely out of thin air. There has to be a group of people caught in the middle.
Sure, yeah.
Let's look at the people who aren't currently in the Google ecosystem. What happens to the hardcore Whoop subscriber whose annual renewal is, coming up right now?
Well, the renewing Whoop subscriber is the only genuine swing vote in this entire scenario.
Okay.
They're the ones staring at a $239 renewal invoice while Google is waving a $99 alternative in their face. But the idea that they will leave en masse ignores the fundamental difference in the actual technology.
It reminds me of the car market, honestly. Leaving Whoop for the Fitbit Air is like trading in a specialized, highly tuned sports car for a reliable family sedan just because the sedan is on sale.
Right, exactly.
Yes, it is drastically cheaper, but it physically cannot do what you bought the sports car to do in the first place.
That is a perfect analogy for the hardware limitations at play here. The Fitbit Air is an activity-grade device. Whoop is a specialized sports tracker.
And DC, Rainmaker's technical deep dive highlights exactly why that price gap exists, starting with automatic activity detection, right?
Yes. The numbers here are wild. The Fitbit Air can automatically detect about 6 basic activities, things like walking, running, or cycling.
Okay.
Whoop can auto-detect roughly 30 different activities.
Wow.
It knows if you are doing CrossFit or Pilates or mountain biking versus indoor cycling.
But wait, how does a screenless band actually know the difference between riding a bike outdoors and riding a stationary bike in your living room? That seems impossible.
It all comes down to sensor sampling rates and algorithmic complexity. Whoop is pinging its accelerometers and gyroscopes dozens of times a second to capture microscopic movement profiles.
Oh, I see.
It literally feels the specific erratic vibration of a mountain bike tire hitting rocks, and it contrasts that with the smooth, rhythmic stability of a stationary bike.
That makes a lot of sense.
But that level of high-frequency data sampling requires really expensive processors and highly optimized battery management. The $99 chip inside the Fitbit Air simply cannot sample data at that speed without draining its 7-day battery in, like, a matter of hours.
So you really do get what you pay for. If you are a high-level athlete, you don't want to manually open an app to log every single complex workout.
No, you definitely don't.
And DC Rainmaker points out Whoop's other lingering advantages, too. Whoop allows you to broadcast your heart rate via Bluetooth to third-party equipment, like a Peloton screen or a cycling computer.
Right, which Fitbit Air doesn't do at all.
Yeah.
Whoop also features an extensive journaling system. If you log that you drank 2 glasses of alcohol, took a magnesium supplement, and slept in a cold room, Whoop's algorithm will calculate the exact percentage impact those specific behaviors had on your next-day recovery score.
That's crazy granular.
It is. It correlates blood biomarkers. Google is not even trying to match that level of sports science.
So the Whoop swing vote largely stays put because of the performance gap. But what about Garmin? Because this is where the landscape gets incredibly tense.
Oh, yeah. Garmin is a whole different story.
We have to talk about the highly anticipated Garmin Cirqa band. According to regulatory FCC filings analyzed by the 5K runner, Garmin is prepping their own screenless band, the Cirqa.
Yep.
But the filings reveal 2 massive details. The Cirqa has no onboard GPS, and Garmin looks poised to lock its most advanced AI coaching features behind a new subscription paywall called Connect Plus Wear.
Which puts Garmin in a fascinating and honestly somewhat precarious strategic position.
See, I have to push back on the idea that Garmin is safe here. If Garmin launches the Cirqa at, say, $199 and then asks users to pay a monthly Connect Plus subscription just to get the good AI features, how do they survive that? The Fitbit Air is sitting right there for $99 with 0 mandatory paywall. Why wouldn't a Garmin user look at that map and immediately jump ship to Google?
Well, on a pure spec sheet comparison, your logic is perfectly sound. But it ignores the concept of data gravity.
Data gravity.
Yeah. To understand Garmin's defense, you have to think of their ecosystem like an airline's frequent flyer program.
Okay, I'm tracking.
If you're an active Garmin user, you likely have 5, maybe 10 years of continuous health data locked inside the Garmin Connect app. You have a decade of marathon finishing times, historical VO2 max trends, cycling power meter data, and, accumulated training load metrics.
Wow, yeah.
And you probably own a $500 Forerunner or Phoenix watch.
So you basically have, like, diamond medallion status with Garmin.
Exactly. You do not switch airlines when you have 1 million miles banked, even if a budget airline offers a $99 flight across the country.
Ah, that makes so much sense.
A Garmin user is not going to abandon a decade of incredibly rich integrated training history just to save $100 on a sleep tracker. Existing Garmin owners will grumble about the price, sure, but they will buy the Cirqa because it seeds their sleep data seamlessly into the Garmin vault they already live in.
So the Fitbit Air's price tag doesn't even tempt them, really. They are locked in by their own history.
Because of that intense loyalty, the Cirqa is strictly a defensive product. Its only job is to provide a comfortable sleep tracking option, so current Garmin users don't buy a Fitbit Air out of desperation.
Just plugging a hole in the ship.
Exactly. It's a shield to keep the Garmin ecosystem sealed tight. Google basically won the price war before Garmin even stepped onto the battlefield, but Garmin doesn't care. They will hold their own territory.
Okay, so we have laid out the entire board here. Google isn't stealing Whoop's elite athletes, and they cannot crack Garmin's data vault.
Yeah.
They are simply giving their own tens of millions of legacy users and smartwatch owners a super cheap, highly appealing upgrade. But here's the question that, to me, changes everything. Why? Why would a $2 trillion tech conglomerate go through all this effort, research, and manufacturing just to sell a piece of polycarbonate hardware for $99 with no required subscription?
It doesn't seem to make sense, right?
Not at all. Selling cheap wristbands at razor-thin margins is definitely not the end goal here.
And this is the central realization of the entire launch. The physical band is practically irrelevant to Google's bottom line. The hardware is just a delivery mechanism for a much, much larger ambition.
This is the mothership connection. Google's strategic interest is not hardware revenue, it is data volume.
Exactly.
They're building a pipeline to pull continuous 24/7 activity, sleep, and heart rate data from tens of millions of human beings directly into their Gemini artificial intelligence training models.
Yeah, and when you look at the software maneuvers happening right alongside this hardware launch, the strategy becomes glaringly obvious. The legacy Fitbit app is being entirely sunsetted and rebranded as Google Health.
Right.
But more importantly, Google is completely overhauling the API, the software bridge that allows different apps and devices to talk to each other. They are modernizing it to be completely bidirectional.
Yeah, DC Rainmaker pointed this out in his hands-on testing, and it completely reframes Google's motive. Google Health is actively encouraging data from any device to flow into their system.
Any device at all.
You can literally take an Apple Watch made by Google's fiercest hardware rival and willingly pipe all your Apple Watch heart rate and sleep data straight into the Google Health app.
Which is wild.
Google does not care whose plastic and glass is strapped to your wrist. They just want the raw information.
Because that raw information is the fuel required to train the Gemini Health Coach. I mean, large language models require an unimaginably massive volume and variety of real-world data to become genuinely predictive.
Yeah.
DC Rainmaker noted that the new Google Health app is incredibly talkative. It's no longer just, presenting you with a static bar chart of your heart rate.
Right. It's doing way more.
The AI is actively analyzing your sleep architecture, cross-referencing it with your daily schedule, and literally initiating a conversation. It might tell you to lower your running mileage today because your deep sleep has been declining for 3 consecutive nights.
It is acting like a personalized interactive coach. But to make that AI coach genuinely smart, to make it the undisputed best in the world so they can eventually monetize the software side, Google needs a scale of human health data that has never been aggregated before.
Right.
So how do you get that data? You drop the price floor of the hardware to $99. You basically eliminate the barrier to entry entirely.
Yep.
You make it so cheap that tens of millions of people buy it without a second thought. They are commoditizing the hardware to win the artificial intelligence war.
It is a brilliant long-term maneuver, really. And as a result, we are witnessing a rapid, massive consolidation of the entire wearable industry.
Oh, absolutely.
The screenless category is polarizing around 2 distinct models of survival right now. On one side, you have Google leveraging bottom-barrel hardware prices to harvest data at an unprecedented scale.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have Garmin aggressively defending a highly lucrative, intensely loyal sports ecosystem.
And where does that leave everyone else? Smaller, specialized players like Whoop or legacy brands like Polar, they're getting squeezed from both sides.
Heavily squeezed.
They don't have Google's trillion-dollar war chest to subsidize cheap hardware, and they don't have Garmin's sprawling ecosystem of bike computers and premium watches.
No, they don't.
So they are being forced to retreat into very specific, highly premium niche corners of the market just to survive at this point.
They have to justify their high subscription costs through increasingly elite, specialized features that the general public simply doesn't need.
Right.
The middle ground of the market it's completely vanished.
It really changes everything about how you look at the gadgets you buy, which brings us back to the core illusion of this entire launch.
Yeah.
You look at that shiny $99 price tag, and you think you're getting the deal of the century on a fitness tracker. Google is handing you a highly capable piece of technology for a fraction of what it should cost.
Yeah, it looks like a steal.
But I want you to think about this the next time you strap a device to your wrist. If a massive globe-spanning tech company is willing to practically give away health tracking hardware just to feed the intimate details of your sleep and your heartbeat into their algorithms,
Yeah.
are you actually the consumer buying a product? Or are you paying $99 for the privilege of becoming the raw training material for the future of artificial intelligence?
When you frame it as a data harvesting operation, that little screenless pod suddenly looks very, very different.
It really does. The real transaction isn't happening at the checkout counter. It's happening every time your heart beats.